want to outline what, for me, is a brainwashing dynamic with Lazaris, and not just Lazaris, but, for this context, I'll focus on Lazaris. So first of all, what is brainwashing? First of all, there has to be fear. So usually there's an imbalance of power in a brainwashing dynamic. If there's no fear and no imbalance of power, then you cannot brainwash someone and you cannot be brainwashed. And so to that extent, right, Lazaris has said that they create universes and are beyond gods and deities. So there's definitely an imbalance in power. Lazaris has also said that they're more. Lazaris has also said that, they just basically live in ecstatic orgasm all the time. And, obviously I don't. And so, there's a desire, right? Because that's also has to be there in many cases. It's why, like, YouTubers make such an effort to have the Lamborghini or something in the background, because you've got to, whatever it is that people think they want, you've got to have some symbols of that. You've got to show that you are a deity by having more of what people want than they have, right? And because they want it, they're praying to that deity of desire. And so you become mingled with that deity if you have more of what someone wants. Men look up to other men who have so many women trying to have sex with them that they have to say no all the time, right? Because they're saying, well, I would enjoy living in that reality. And so, I have to show respect to you because you're succeeding at what I want more than I am, right? So Lazaris is definitely portraying themselves in that kind of category, right? Most people, if given the chance to be wildly successful, have fun all the time, and live in the equivalent of a continual orgasm, would say, yes, please, right? So, and Lazaris is saying, well, we're there already, right? So that's that dynamic. Now, and the other important dynamic is to make contradictory statements. Now, if the brainwashing is systematic, i.e., if you are being tortured into a brainwashing or brainwashed state by a government program, right, to quote, break terrorists or whatever, and I mean, who's the terrorist there? But either way, if it's a systemic program of effectively turning someone away from where they are now to whatever is the new dogma, what you have to do is get the person to stop focusing on themselves and focus on the other, right? So that isn't, to brainwash someone, you must transfer the focus. Like, everyone starts out, every child, whatever, starts out, self-centered, right? They're centered in their self. And, that's how that got to be a dirty word is another issue, but you've got to be focused on yourself, and that's a natural state. However, in parental abuse cycles, the self-centeredness becomes other-centeredness, right? So you have a narcissistic parent who's focused on themselves, not on the child, and the child does what's good for them, and sometimes that's good for the parent, and sometimes it isn't. And whenever it isn't, the narcissistic parent uses their superior mass to inflict pain. There's a pain reward given that reaches a threshold where the child will turn away from what they want into what the parent wants, right? So I may say, as a narcissistic parent, stop making that noise. I want to watch this TV program. But, the child is focused on themselves. They want to make that noise, so they do that. So I go over there and I hit the child. And maybe but then they go back to it again. So I give them a bigger hit. There's a certain point in that violence where the child says, oh dear, if I keep focusing on me, I'll be dead. And then the obvious thing is what I need to focus on is what dad wants, right? I don't want to be hit. In fact, that is such a horrific, traumatic experience that I'll do anything not to be hit, right? So now the focus is going out there at this point. The focus is out there. Now, that's the next step in brainwashing, right? And so how does that happen with Lazaris? Well, Lazaris makes, well, first of all, I would say the first step of that moving out there is Lazaris talks 99% of the time. Right? If you take the entire time that Lazaris has been channeling through Jach, and you measure all the minutes that Lazaris has talked, and all of the minutes that anyone on the planet has talked to Lazaris, Lazaris talks 99% of the time, right? You go to a reading and Lazaris talks the first thing, well, here we are, like all this opening remarks. What would you like to focus on? You say, I'd like to focus on this. Lazaris, that took what, 2 seconds? Lazaris will then talk for 5 or 10 minutes about that and say, does that make sense? And you say yes or no, right? And then what else, right? And so the dynamic is 99% Lazaris. And then in the workshops, it's not even a personal thing. It's just lecture after lecture after lecture. So the first thing that puts the attention out there is Lazaris does 99% of the talking. Lazaris picks 99% of the topics. If you take the entire body of Lazaris material and say, how much of that came from people saying, could we talk about, like, what we want to talk about, and how much is Lazaris saying, this is what we're going to talk about, right? So Lazaris talks 99% of the time, picks 99% of the topics, right? And Lazaris controls the time and space of the interaction, right? So Lazaris doesn't reach out to friends around the world and say, when's a good time for you to talk, right? You reach out to Jach and wait 1, 2 years, whatever, or they just announce, be there or don't be there. We don't care, we're doing what we want when we want to do it. And then, of course, the money going one way, right? We're not going to pay you to listen to us or to learn stuff. You're going to pay us to listen to what we want to talk about, when we want to talk about it, where we want to talk about it, for the amount of time we want to talk about it, right? I mean, and then we'll do 99% of the talking, right? So that pretty much puts a lot of the attention towards Lazaris, and not towards what you want to talk about, right? Because attention would come up if Lazaris said, go inside and listen to what you want to talk about, when you want to talk about it, in the way that you want to talk about it, and we'll be there. Right? So so that puts it out there to Lazaris. Also, saying that you're beyond a god, we're well past those levels, right? So whatever you thought was God, most of us have some semblance of that growing up, like God's but whatever those are, Lazaris is way bigger than that. Now, there's confusion that is appropriate, meaning the world is a very complex place, so there is fuzziness and confusion just about anywhere you look if you have the decency to have a little humility, right? Because, yes, there's tons of arrogance, but that generally gets proven wrong, right? Even science is regularly reinventing itself. Oh, we used to say this, but now we know this, right? And we used to say that, and now we know this. And, and science is constantly, changing itself. But if you're well beyond deities and you are confused, I'm not sure I get that, right? So how many people are in that state a lot of the time, right? I'm not sure, right? I want to go do this. I also want to do that. Overall, I'm not sure which is the best way, right? So confusion is an ever-present state, I would say, to one degree or another, if you have the eyes to notice it. And so whenever I think about anything that Lazaris says, I'm confused, right? That there's a certain amount of it, like, okay, I think I get that, or I wonder if that's the case. That's not how I saw it, but I wonder if that's the case. Maybe Lazaris sees it more. Now, so there's confusion. But Lazaris is not saying that they're confused. They're saying that their techniques work and this is the way it is, and they see things clearer because they're not physical, right? So you're confused, and it doesn't seem like that's the case, but beyond deities, creator of universes, perfectly clear, our techniques work, we're where you want to be, right? Well, so who are you going to listen to, right? Your confusion or Lazaris? Now, obviously, if you say channeling is a bunch of bunk and, Jach's a scam artist and stuff, well, then you're not going to buy the tapes, right? Because why would you give a scam artist your money, right? You're not going to buy the tapes, right? So the only people buying the tapes have to have more of them believe what Lazaris is saying than not, right? Because you don't say Lazaris is full of shit, but let me pay good money and spend my time listening to bullshit. Nobody does that, right? So every single person who buys and listens to a tape is doing so because more of them believes that Lazaris is correct than incorrect. Now, that is a very powerful power dynamic of belief, right? Because if you have to decide, because why don't you just sit and listen to you? Why don't you just sit down, meditate, and listen to yourself, right? Why not? Well, there has to be some part that says, well, Lazaris understands it more than I do. I could listen to myself for free, but I'm not going to do that. I don't trust myself. I want to listen to what Lazaris has to say, because it's bound to be, if he's creating universes and all that, it's bound to be better than what I would do, right? So that shifts the attention towards Lazaris, towards a bias of belief. So when Lazaris says it's easier to succeed than it is to fail, right? We look at that and we say, well, gosh, I've been trying to get this house permit, and first they wanted this, right? They wanted that. Then they said that one was out of date, so they want me to go spend thousands over to here. And it's like, this is easier than just not building the house, right? You just rent, right? I mean, how is going through all this process easier than not going through this process, right? Right, and it's easier to succeed at starting a small business than it is to fail, right? So why are 90% of them going out of business within 10 years, right? Or never getting off the ground, or, or people working longer? Why is that, right? If it's so much easier, right? But you see, Lazaris must know what they're talking about, right? Lazaris, the creating universes, this must be small change to Lazaris, right? So there's a magnetic predisposition, a bias, to say, I thought this whole time it was easier to fail or do nothing than to succeed, but I guess I was wrong. Right, and of course, nobody also would listen to Lazaris if every single thing they said, you said, I already knew that, I agree with all that, I knew that. Well, then, if you knew all that and you agree with all that, again, why are you listening to the material? So supposedly, for the hypothesis of buying and listening to the material to be, moderately reasonable, you have to believe that Lazaris sees things differently than you do, and that what they see is better, more useful than what you see. Right? If you think that what you see and understand is more useful than what Lazaris sees and understands, why the hell would you sit and listen to Lazaris? Right? Since they do all the talking, they're not asking you for advice, they're doing all the talking, right? So why would you do that? So that transfers the bias outward. I believe that Lazaris knows and sees things better than I do, and that what they see is more useful than what I see. So I'll be better off, this is the basis of any commercial relationship, I believe that I will be better off paying this money and taking this time to listen to Lazaris tapes than I would taking that time and money and going on vacation, or writing in my journal and listening to what I think and what I channel and all that. So that is the basis of that kind of a relationship, right? Because Lazaris is not coming to anyone and asking them for help or advice or insight. Right? What have you found? Like, could we have a show of hands? We want to learn what you found about this. Lazaris has no interest in any of that, right? So they don't ask, and nobody volunteers. Lazaris doesn't say, how many times have you done the 33-second technique, and how many times did it work? I guess we have a 10% success rate. That would be pushing it, by the way, right? If you take 1,000 people and have them do the 33-second technique and then report back and focus on what they really want and report back on how many of them got it within 3 days, whatever the protocol is. And you wanted a new job, but did you get a new job? No, you didn't do that. You wanted a new car, you did this. You wanted, and it happened, right? And then could do a comparison study, like how many times if you just wanted something without doing the 33-second technique, did you get it? Lazaris doesn't ask these things because apparently they're not interested in that feedback. They are going to announce that our techniques work, whether or not they do, right? And so it's a little bit like the Catholic Church announcing that the Earth is the center of the universe. And, Galileo looks through his telescope and says, it doesn't seem to be the case, right? I don't want to incur the wrath of God, but it doesn't seem to be the case. You want to have a look, Cardinal? What do you think? No, I will not look, right? I have faith in the dogma, not the data, right? So the data is clear. Lazaris' techniques do not work a very large percentage of the time for a very large percentage of people. Now, of course, if, this is where the dogma gets tricky, right? Pray to Jesus. Well, I did. My mom died of cancer. Ah, right? Jesus is punishing you for your sins, right? You should pray to Jesus, but it didn't work because ... See, here it says in the Bible, you have to be absolved of your sins, right? You go absolve yourself of your sins, right? Right? It's never questioned, right? The dogma is never questioned. You've got to go figure this out it's always self-referential, right? And so similarly with Lazaris, right? Well, did you break your dark shield? Oh, you did that. Okay, but did you do it in the last week? Well, there you go. Do you have self-pity? Aha, right? Human beings have had self-pity since the dawn of time. I mean, have there ever been human beings that don't feel sorry for themselves when rotten things happen? Have there ever been human beings for whom rotten things don't happen? Aha, right? That's the cause right there, right? You didn't feel but what about self-importance? Well, what about your negative ego? Did you process and program your blockages? Oh, well, there you go, right? See, our techniques work. It's just you didn't do them good enough. Well, Lazaris, since you've outlined, well, that's it. We don't have time for questions, right? Okay, well, it's my recording. We do actually have time here, an unlimited amount of time, Lazaris. What about all that unlimited amount of time that you have, right? Well, you could channel through 10,000 people if you felt like it. You said you only put a tiny little bit of yourself in the channeling. Why not do 10,000 people and actually have time for a dialogue? Well, we've got lots of time, but we choose to create scarcity, right? So that you can't ask your question. We create universes. We just do what we like to do. Well, so there is, anyway, we have time here. So Lazaris, since you've created thousands of hours of techniques in all these areas, which order are they supposed to be? You do realize, Lazaris, there isn't enough time in the week to go through your busting ego tape, your self-pity tape, your self-this, that. There isn't enough time in the week, right? So, right, what about this other person who doesn't do any of your techniques and that bit worked for them, right? So why is that working, right? And this is the same troubling thing with the Christian dynamic, right? You didn't pray enough, you didn't ask to Jesus, you didn't pay enough to the church, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But Jesus answers all your prayers, right? And they have a good plan, right? There's a reason that your child died of smallpox. I mean, mysterious ways, but there is a reason, right? Well, what about that Muslim over there? His child didn't die of smallpox. He's not even asking you about Jesus, right? He doesn't even. Right? So what's up with that? Well, that's blasphemy. You dare to question the Lord thy God. You dare to question, right? Well, that is always the unraveling of any system, right? You actually question it. You look at its flaws, you look at its strengths, right? And it ceases to be an all-powerful deity, right? So, but that tendency, right? Because you try and contact concept synergy. Well, it's not going to go very well. Just give it a try. If you have any doubt, just give it a try. And if you talk with acolytes, like if you talk with Christians, do you think you could be wrong, really, that God didn't really want your baby to die of smallpox? Oh, maybe, they say. Maybe your baby is was needed in heaven, right? I guess so, maybe, right? But when you talk to a devout Christian, they never say, right? There's yet to be a devout Christian that says, you may be right. I could be full of shit, right? It's a good point, right? God sent, why was he so chauvinistic? Why didn't he get married? All this, you're right, the God's a chauvinist. He only sent one guy down with a burning bush. Why did God contribute to global warming? Like, why didn't God send a text, right? To a woman, right? Or to a man and woman, why didn't God believe in equality, right? You're probably right. God's quite possibly full of shit. I may have been wasting my entire life as a Christian, entire life, believing utter bullshit, right? And I won't know until I die, right? And then the joke will be on me, right? Because, it's pretty crazy. Right? Christians have done all this killing in the name of the Lord. Pretty crazy. Right? Christians are always coveting thy neighbor's wife. Right? Right? So, pretty crazy. So the whole thing is probably bullshit, but, right, just to be on the safe side, I'm buying in it because I believe in a God that might torture me for eternity for not doing what I'm told. Right? And so, I'm playing the odds, right? 50-50. But you're probably right. But I'm not going to say that just in case God punishes me for thinking, right? So, so it never, right? If you talk with a Lazaris friend, I did that and complete bullshit, meaning nothing got better, things got mildly worse, took 6 hours, and there are much better ways of doing things, right? You say that to a Lazaris friend, they say, well, maybe Lazaris is seeing things, from maybe you have a past life influence, that you're not seeing things clearly. Maybe you have to do some negative ego work, right? So the dogma is always protected by self-referential material rather than actual data. Right? That's what makes it a dogma. So all of this takes the focus out there, right? But the last bit of brainwashing is, I'm going to say, the sky is blue, the sky is green, the sky is red, the sky is blue, the sky is green, the sky is red. What color's the sky? You look up and you say, well, it looks like it's a gray right now. They say no, and they hit you, right? Or no, it's not gray, whatever. It's red. Now, what color's the sky? Right? It still looks gray to me. No, you fool, it's red. They hit you, right? What color's the sky? Red? Oh, good boy, right? Good boy, right? It's a red sky, right? So we're going to reward you for your bullshit. And so now it's deeper into the other, right? You're focused. I don't want to be hit. They've got the larger size, and so where do I focus? I try and then they say what color's the sky? And you say red. They say no, you fool, it's green. Now, what color is the sky? And you say green. Yes, it's green, right? So you learn to basically pivot with the insanity of the one that has the ability to hurt and help you, and has, is offering some kind of a doorway to what you want. Right? So how does that work? Now, Lazaris is not hitting people, thank goodness. Is not condemning people, so a huge step up from Christianity to burn alive for all eternity. So that's huge. So what are the curses that Lazaris is kind of attributing to whether you listen to their approach or not? This could be your last lifetime. Could be, right? You see how miserable you are in this lifetime, despite saying that you create your own reality and all that. And this could be the last one. You could be off in those upper levels. Oh, wouldn't that be great, right? Or you have to come back here and deal with another bullshitty set of parents, right? So, oh gosh, right? Heaven and hell again, right? You could have everything that you want. You could create your own reality, and it could be easy, and you could have joy and more joy and this and that and the other, right? None of your friends are doing that, are they, right? They're feeling bitter because someone raped their daughter, and they're annoyed because they got fired for telling the truth and all this stuff, right? But you could be off in this wonderful, much higher level if you do the Lazaris techniques perfectly, right? And I mean, perfectly enough for them to work, right? Not with the ego and not with this, and not with your more and not with your lesser, and get the archetype right and all that. If you get all that right, then you can have it all, right? You can have it all. Or you can just have your mediocre, shame-based life and feel terrible like you do, right? And so you have the same heaven and hell paradigm. And then in terms of the corollary with the sky is red, the sky is blue, the sky is green. Just tell me what it is, Lazaris. I mean, you've said this in 1978, you said that and this, you said this on that tape. I don't know how to synthesize all that. Obviously, I'm doing it wrong because the Lazaris techniques work and they're not working for me. Poor me, right? I just felt some self-pity there. Now I've created, that's how I did it, right? I sabotaged it, right? The Lazaris techniques are working, but they're not working for me. A whiff of self-pity. Now I've sabotaged, my whole year, right? Oh gosh, if only I could do the perfect process with and feel grateful and all this stuff, right? So, so there's never any reflection on the deity, on the dogma, on, questioning the reality. So, right, so Lazaris, on the original morning tape, spends, I would say, most of the tape dealing, let's say at least half of it, dealing with tape loops of negativity, healing trauma, and all that. Now, if Lazaris believed that his techniques work and was going to give someone a tape to listen to for the next 3 decades, every single morning, wouldn't Lazaris have an initial tape that said, here's how you get rid of the tape loops. They work, so just do this, and when they're all gone, now listen to the ecstatic morning tape, right? But no, Lazaris just kept the tape loop morning tape where you have your tape loops of pain and give us your hurt and give us your rage and give it up and give it up. In other words, Lazaris is counting on it being there for the end of time, right? It's not just a moment here. It's like, you need this tape, listen in the morning, it'll help you. Do what? Get rid of your pain. But if your techniques worked, why would there be that pain? Right? Well, is there pain? Yes. Now, you want to question that our techniques work, or do you want to admit that you did the techniques wrong? And so we're just, helping you get rid of the pain that you're creating by doing your techniques wrong. Our techniques wrong. Well, they're good techniques, you're doing them wrong. It's easier to succeed and do the techniques right, but you're not going to do that. We know that you create your own reality, but we know that you're not going to do the techniques right. So here's a tape to keep getting rid of the pain every 3 days, just more pain, more pain, more pain, more pain, more pain for decades. Because it's easier to succeed than it is to fail. It's joyful to heal, our techniques work, but you're not going to do any of that. And so here's, right, this. There will be crisis in your life. You create your own reality. There will be crisis in your life. You create your own reality. The future creates the past against the backdrop of the present. You created positive future, but, right, this is not working, right? Right, so there's, it's red, it's blue, it's red, it's blue, it's red, it's blue, right? You can have it all. Now let's deal with how miserable it feels to not have it all. So I think that the natural response, certainly my response to this, to the extent that I believe in Lazaris, says, Lazaris, just tell me what to do. Which tape should I listen to this week? Every single tape, you pretend it's the most important one. Just tell me which one to listen to it, where, tell me what are my payoffs, why it isn't working, right? Then tell me how much money I have to spend to get the other techniques and the new crystals and this and that that's going to resolve it, right? And then tell me why I didn't do that right? Because there are no pinnacle Lazaris friends, right? Dying tragically as Penny and Michael did is no great, it's easier to succeed than it is to fail, right? Jach dealing with just the martyrhood of Lazaris saying their techniques and being surrounded by with people for whom the techniques are not working. What a martyring thing for Jach, right? I don't know. Lazaris said that they're not working in my life either, right? My employees do this does that. Oh, right. Oh, now I have to feel like I be the example to everyone. Can you imagine how irritating it is to be Jach, right? I'm selling this material. My income is coming from, so I've got to say that I think something of it, right? But, right? Penny died this way, Michael died this way, there's fights with all the past concept synergy staff and this and that. I hate it, right? And then I'm supposed to be the figurehead of this. Right? The channel that just does all this stuff. Oh my God. Oh, I feel like such a martyr, and I can't let anyone know that because then why am I taking, oh my goodness. If I just say it's bullshit, but I'm going to keep taking money to sell this bullshit to you, which doesn't work for me, right? Well, crazy making for Jach. Right? So, that's right. But the assumption is that I've got it wrong. If I spend a penny and any minutes listening to Lazaris, I've got to do it on the basis that I must not be seeing it clearly. I must be wrong. Right? But what happens when you believe Lazaris must be right and it just grinds you down? Just grinds you down. Like what happens when parts of you beat yourself up because Lazaris got it right and you failed again? So what a schmuck, right? I mean, I failed again, my negative ego ruined it again. Oh, what a schmuck. Right? I could be off in the stars having orgasms all the time, right? But I just couldn't, I wasn't good enough, right? So then you feel worse. You feel ashamed to admit that the techniques aren't working. Well, what happens when that happens, right? You hide it. I don't want anyone to know the techniques aren't working for me, but we're in this paradigm where we believe it would be easier for them to work than not to work. What about that, right? So now you spent all this money, you spent all this time, it's not working, and you feel ashamed. Lazaris, tell me what to do there, right? Obviously, I'm not doing it good enough, right? So this is a loop, and it can happen with any teacher, any dogma, any belief system can take you to this place. So, thank you, Lazaris, for not adding a lake of fire and damnation and evil, blah, 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 right? The world as it is horrifically painful enough to just contrast that with, what it could be. And thank you for paying lip service to, you're not wrong, you're not bad, you just didn't know what? The latest tape. You just didn't know the latest thing. So there you are hooked again. Got to get the latest thing to find out why my reality isn't working this month, right? Now, the final thing that just kind of completes the surrender to power process or outcome is Lazaris, like I was just listening to the crisis tape right now, Lazaris will say, you know this, you've done your shame work, you've done this, you've done that. Well, on the shame work, Lazaris said if you did the shame work, this thing would be sorted out. And on that tape, Lazaris said you would, and now Lazaris is saying, well, you've done that, and you've done this, and you've done that, and you know all this. I do not know all of that. No, I don't know any of that. I certainly don't know it enough to live it, right? And the techniques have not worked enough to allow me to live that, so I would say no, I do not know that the shame is this and that. I don't know any of that, right? I've had some modicum of result, 10, 20% here and there in different things, some insights, right? My reality is still filled with pain, shame, fear, anxiety, depression, right? Still there. Been there throughout the whole period, right? I've met Lazaris in a suicidal state. Right? I've been through several suicidal states since that point. And no, I don't know any of that, right? But Lazaris will just say, you know that. You know that. He doesn't ask, right? Because that would take you into yourself, and you could say, actually, Lazaris, I don't know that. Do you think I did the shame work good enough? Right? Because why do I feel so much shame? Right? So are you saying that this is done? And what makes it done? Just you saying it? Or do I actually have to feel less shame for it to be done, right? I think Barbara Brennan just died recently in a shame blow up after working with Penny for decades and being fired by Concept Synergy, right? Does she know all that, right? So no, I don't know all that, but Lazaris is saying that I do. So maybe I should suppress my doubt that I know any of this and pretend, okay, Lazaris, apparently I do know it. Then I listen to the shame tape and he says, but you don't understand this. And so I guess I don't know it, but I do know it, right? And then there will be crisis. Just tell me what to do, right? I'm in pain. Tell me what to do, right? So that's, I think, the entry into brainwash. Now, I think this is added by the fact that I'm probably 70% what in the internal family system model would be parts, right? So within that model, which I think is probably a 7 times better model than what I've learned from Lazaris. Within that model, there's different parts that have roles of managing trauma and pain, and they're operating until you get in dialogue and understand them and honor them and release them from their roles. Now, obviously, this is a system that does not work perfectly either, right? Richard Schwartz, the author, you can watch him on YouTube, talk to Tim Ferriss or, others, and, he's not the epitome of vitality. He still has conflicts with his wife, right? But let's say that they work, that works some of the time as well. Within that thing that, there's a huge part in me that feels absolutely terrified of being hit if I expand or express myself in any way. And it feels incredibly hurt and small, right? So in my body today, 50% of my whole experience is about the terror and hurt and shock of being hit as a 3-year-old. That's me today. Then there's a, quote, manager part that's trying to say, don't cry, don't make any noise, don't be big, don't give anyone a reason to hit you. Now that's like 30% of my energy. So it was 50% is in this kind of helpless shaking thing that I woke up in. 30% is in saying, don't speak, don't say anything, you'll be hit, you'll get into trouble, don't upset anyone, right? Just get as small as you possibly can so nobody will hit you, right? So that's my experience today. So where does this come in, right? So this voice then is more of a rebel to that, right? Fuck that, right? How long are we going to spend our entire life cowering, afraid of being hit and not doing anything, right? Because our culture can't manage to teach parents how to stop abusing their children, right? What? I'm just going to sit here in terror and feel like I'm not doing good enough and I shouldn't say anything and that's what I'm going to do? Fuck that, right? So this, you could call this being the counterbalance manager to manage this part of me that would just basically curl up and wait to die, hoping not to be hit. And then this voice is saying, no, right? We're going to speak, we're going to do this, right? Right, so that's this voice coming out. Well, Lazaris isn't even addressing these things, right? The fact, this is not an anomaly, right? You think my wife is somehow profoundly connected to herself, just exuding presence? No, right? All the same, different dynamics, right? You think my neighbors are clear? You think Jach is free of all of his obscuring parts? Bullshit, right? So in decades of work with Lazaris, these things are not getting sorted out. You see, and the protocol that really works is dialogue, right? Working with the part, connecting the part with the self. I didn't even know what the self was until I took mushrooms, which were not suggested by Lazaris. Right? The most effective technique I've ever found to experience myself, breath work and mushrooms. Right? So what does that mean? It just means that I have met myself from time to time. Right? Maybe 10 to 30% of me, you could say, is connected, loosely speaking, with self. And then the rest of me is all these different parts trying to manage hopeless grief without being demasculinized, trying to avoid being hurt and betrayed by this, and just endless defenses and stuff. And then this part is trying desperately to be spiritual enough, right? To do all these things right? And what does Lazaris said? Well, you're just trying to be better than. That's perfectionism. You're trying to be better than. Stop it. Yes, sir, Lazaris, right? I wish that worked, right? Just stop it, right? Well, how about another approach? Lazaris, just channel through a few more people and give some time for dialogue and ask for the data and address the data. How many people find this technique works what percentage of the time? Right? Because there is a cost in time, money, natural resources, and hope every time you try and do something. Every time you fail, there is a cost to that failure. Right? Lazaris doesn't pay that cost. People do. His friends do. His paying friends. Right? Why do we have to have a prostitute relationship with our friend? If you create universes, why not just give Jach a few tips on the market and stop asking friends to pay for friendship, right? That's prostitution. Why not do that? You say you're way beyond these levels? Show it. No, we're way beyond these levels, but you have to pay a non-physical being for this. So, well, that doesn't make much sense, but you don't get to talk about that either. So I would say that, when I realized that I was in this quandary, that's when I walked away from Lazaris. It's like, no, I don't need to figure this all out. I don't need to figure the Christian bullshit out. God can call up on the phone if he's that interested in getting his message across. We don't have to believe some book, right? He's not saying go inside. He's saying read my message that's 2,000 years outdated, right? I'm not going to figure all that bullshit out, right? I'm not going to figure out, right, all this hypocrisy and nonsense, right? I'm going to try and do what works based on the data, right? And there is still a place for Lazaris in all that, right? But it's an ambiguous place. It's a confusing place. And since there is no place on the planet that I know of to have this conversation without someone with a strong agenda, right, to do something other than just try and think it through, right? YouTube is a safer place to do this than the forum, than the Lazaris workshop. And it's way more expedient than waiting years for a reading that isn't available, right? And it's and kind of wrestling with why you have to pay for friendship. I'll leave it at that.